everybody and welcome. I'd like to say thank you to West Midlands Combined Authority for inviting me along today to talk to you about menopause. As the slide is suggest, this session is about starting the conversations around menopause. And my name is Julie and I work for a company called Henpicked Menopause in the workplace. And as the name suggests, we are about starting those conversations in the workplace, but we are very aware that menopause doesn't stay in the workplace, that menopause does extend out into other people's home lives. So we're here about making these conversations around supporting people in both home and work. We've got two really important passions within Henpicked Menopause in the workplace. One is about making this conversation normal. So normalizing this conversation. So removing the taboos and the stigma around this conversation. And we're also here to ensure that we can support organisations allowing individuals that are going through menopause to continue to thrive at work. So it fits really nicely with the Thrive at Work initiative that we are involved with here. And it's not always an easy transition for people. So it's about having that conversation to be able to see what support is available. As it says at the bottom of the slide that's on the screen at the moment.
Sorry, Julie, the slides aren't there. We can't see the slides, sorry.
This is always great, isn't it, when the technology doesn't start well. My apologies. Let's go with the you just had my lovely face instead, was it? How's that? Is that better?
Yes, perfect, thank you.
There you go. It's good job I wasn't saying anything else about the slides or you would have missed them all. Yeah, so as it says on the slide, at times throughout the presentation, the terms women, female or her may be used. This is purely for the flow of the conversation, but please be assured that this is an inclusive conversation that we're having. And there may well be individuals that don't necessarily identify as female, but still have the biology to be able to experience menopause. So let's start with the session. As Laura said, this will be around 20 minutes and then there will be a 10-minute break, hopefully at the end, in order to be able to answer your questions. But please put them in the chat and then we can catch up with them as we're going along if we need to. So let's have a look at what we're going to cover. It's going to be, like I said, quite a short session, but I want to get in as much as possible. So this session is as useful to you as it can be. So let's start with, first of all, we're going to talk about why. Why do we need to talk about menopause? It's been around for such a long time. Why do we need to talk about it now? And then we're going to look at some of the facts around menopause. So the words that are used, the symptoms that are involved, and then finally, we're going to have that little Q&A session at the end. So first of all, why? Why are we talking about menopause now? Well, there's three cases I'm going to look at. The first one is the demographic case. Menopausal aged women are the fastest growing demographic in the workplace. 80% of people going through menopause are still in work, and they may well be in multiple roles throughout the organisation. They could have been in senior roles, they may be transitioning into new roles, taking on new responsibilities. So this is a significant portion of the workplace that will be experiencing menopause symptoms. Not everybody will have challenges, but people going through menopause will be experiencing some changes. And if you look at the statistics on the screen, now this is a recent report, the Fawcett report in 2022. This is around how these symptoms are impacting on individuals' workplace. So as it says there, 10% have left work due to their symptoms. Now this is either because their symptoms were so difficult that they couldn't manage at work anymore, or they didn't feel that they were having the correct support. They didn't feel that they were being supported. They didn't feel that the resources and the information was there in their workplace. And if you think about that group of that work demographic and how many within your organization fit into that, and how would the business react if 10% of those individuals left the workplace? But it's not always just about somebody leaving. It could be that somebody has reduced their hours, and 14% of these people have gone down to part-time. 8% have not applied for a promotion. So they may well have been working for many, many years within an organisation, and an opportunity came up for a promotion, but they just didn't feel in a position to be able to do that. And this is about that continuing support to allow somebody to thrive within their workplace, to allow somebody to continue to be in a job that they enjoy and that they want to do. 3% have retired and 13% are considering retiring. So they are cutting short their work life. That may well impact on them financially with pensions, etc. That might impact on them from a mental health point of view, that they feel that their work life has now been cut short. Now, this is, as I said, a report that was done in 2022. And we know that there isn't always that honesty around menopause, that people aren't always going to admit to having challenges and having needing some support around menopause. So these statistics might be quite low. It might be that these statistics are actually not giving us the true picture, but it's certainly a place to start. And this is what we want to be changing. We want to be changing these statistics. We want to be normalizing this conversation. We want to be ensuring that people don't feel that their only option is to leave work, but actually that they can continue to thrive. So as I said, we think that these statistics might not be as true as they could be, and that's because in another report that was done in 2021, 46% of people wouldn't disclose that they were going through menopause challenges because they feel that it would be perceived negatively. So if they were maybe in, for example, a male-dominated environment, or they were in a senior leadership role, that they felt if they came forward and explained that these challenges were down to menopause, this might have a negative impact on them, or that they were worried that their ability might be questioned. That 41% of people felt that they would rather not say anything because they felt that people would question their ability to do that role. And maybe they felt that they wouldn't want to continue in that role if people knew about it. And the final square on the slide is that it's the right thing to do. This is about continually supporting somebody to be able to thrive in that role that they've done maybe for many, many years within an organisation. But we're all businesses, and we all have to think about the bottom line. So when you think about it from a business case point of view, reducing that time off, but also ensuring that that individual, when they are at work, are performing to their best of ability, that they continue to be motivated. You're probably familiar with a term called presenteeism, where that means we're in our work seat in body, but not necessarily in mind. So we're there, but we're not functioning. And that might not be an all day long thing. That might be in the morning that they're not quite feeling themselves, but maybe in the afternoon their performance and motivation improves. But it's what can be done in order to be able to support them. And absolutely does it improve retention of staff, and also from a recruitment point of view. If you're looking to recruit within that work demographic, so you're looking to recruit within a menopausal age group, knowing that your organisation will provide that support, will provide that education, will provide extra resources, is a really, really attractive proposition from a recruitment point of view. So that's why we're talking about it. That's why we want to continue this conversation. That's why we're here today. So let's have a look at menopause. What are the facts? What are we talking about? We hear these words bandied about, but what do they mean? So if you look at breaking down menopause into defined terms, the first part of menopause is what we call perimenopause. This is the beginning. This is before you go into menopause. Now, this can happen. It can be, on average, between 5 and 7 years, you'll start experiencing some of these symptoms. We're going to talk about what the symptoms look like in a second, but you might start experiencing some of these symptoms between 5 and 7 years. Some people are experiencing these maybe 10 years before they go through menopause. So then menopause. What's actually menopause itself? Well, all of this talk, and it's actually a one-day event. It is clinically diagnosed, if that's the term you want to use, as not having had a period for 12 months. And on that day, that single day, you are considered to have gone through menopause. Everything after that is then considered post-menopause, and that's the rest of your life. So whatever date you go through, you are then considered to be in post-menopause. So let's have a look at some timings. So on average, menopause happens at around 51, but it can be anything between 45 and 55. So if we break that down with you including the perimenopausal dates in there, if you're looking at maybe going through menopause at say 45, you could be experiencing some menopausal symptoms as early as your mid-30s. Now that might not necessarily be something you would consider in your mid-30s, that you were going through menopause. So any of these symptoms you could easily write off as the stresses and strain of normal life. So it's about that identification of what these symptoms might look like and the timing of them. Menopause late in the 60s. Early menopause is around early 40s, so anything between 40 and 45. But premature menopause, often known as early menopause or POI, which is premature ovarian insufficiency. This is in usually around 2022, but we are aware of individuals that have gone through it as early as 15. So if you are, it's categorized between the age of 12 to 35. There are lots of other issues around POI, fertility issues, mental health issues as well. So, and identifying POI can be quite difficult, because especially if it's very early, because it can then be that the crossover between puberty and menopause is very close. So understanding the age that it happened, and from an education point of view, to understand that the perimenopause can happen a considerable time before we actually go through menopause. So I've talked about symptoms, and there are lots. Can we quantify them? There is around now at the moment about 35 labelled symptoms, but everybody is different. Not everybody will have symptoms. Some will have more challenging symptoms. 1 in 4 women will go through menopause with very little symptoms. 1 in 4 will go through with very severe, challenging symptoms. And 2 in 4 kind of go somewhere in the middle. The symptoms can be different for different people and at different times. We tend to categorize them into physical symptoms and psychological symptoms. So your physical symptoms are the ones that we'd always identify with menopause. So your hot flushes, your night sweats, there could be skin issues. So skin starts itching, any surfaces, your soft tissue starts becoming a bit dry. So you'll get aches and pains. I know of people that have stopped wearing contact lenses as they go into menopause because their eyes get so dry. I've heard about people whose teeth have fallen out because their gums become more dry and rigid and their teeth fall out. So there's a whole range of physical symptoms that we might be experiencing. Things around bleeding for period, recurrent urinary tract infections that you just can't get rid of, or they're forever there. So there's a whole host of physical ones. And then you've got your psychological ones or your cognitive ones. And this is your anxiety, your brain fog, your inability to multitask anymore, that memory recall. My particular favorite is the memory recall. It's even worse when you can't recall the phrase memory recall when you're trying to talk about it. And brain fog, that comes at all sorts of times of the day. I have 2 children and a dog, and sometimes I mix up the names of all 3. Insomnia can also impact on that. So the physical symptoms and the psychological symptoms can be hand in hand. You could be struggling with your insomnia. That makes your brain fog so much worse, which makes your anxiety so much worse, which then makes your sleeping so much worse. Stress and menopause symptoms are not friends. Our stress hormones increase when we're stressed, and the stress hormones impact on our estrogen and our progesterone, which are the hormones that we are depleting as we're going through menopause. So understanding symptoms, menopause symptoms, are on an individual basis, finding out what each individual person is their own challenges, as opposed to assuming everybody is struggling with the night sweats or the hot flushes. Having that conversation, starting that conversation, which brings us on to how do we manage our menopause? Well, there are lots of ways to manage menopause. Obviously, the first one that would come to everybody's mind would be HRT. That's not everybody's route of choice, and every option is valid. And HRT isn't that magic pill. It can take up to 3 months to work, and you might not be successful on the first application. You might need to look at a different pill or a different cream or a different lotion. There are alternative and complementary options. You can look at other things, but they do take a bit longer, and they do need to be prescribed by a registered practitioner. This is not the time for Dr. Google. This is definitely a time to be going and speaking to a registered professional. And then any lifestyle changes have a huge impact on menopause symptoms. As I said, stress can make menopause symptoms worse. So if you're aware of a stressful time of your life, if you then start feeling your menopause symptoms are getting worse, it'll probably be related back to that stress. So looking at alternative ways, increasing your exercise, mindfulness is a really good thing when it comes to stress, looking at your diet, not changing life, not making life dull, but just maybe tweaking things, especially when we're looking at longer term health. It can help from a lifestyle point of view. The other thing is about getting accurate advice. I've already said about using your registered professionals, but going to your GP, but getting the correct information when you go to the GP. So using things like the NICE guidelines, using recognised websites such as the British Menopause Society. These will all be useful places to signpost people to. We have a whole website that is dedicated to this. It's henpicked.net. Go onto the website. There is loads of information on there. It will signpost you to other websites. It will signpost you to resources, articles, information on there. We've also got on there a bank of lunch and learns. These are 30-minute videos that you can download or you can watch on the website, covering a whole host of topics. We run them usually twice a month. You can log in, register live and watch them live. They're completely free. Or you can go onto the Henpicked website, click on the Menopause Hub, and you will find the whole bank of recorded ones. There are loads of options there. And if you need anything from me at any point, I am here. You just can email me, julie@henpicked.net. I can signpost you again to some of our other free resources, and again, articles, posters. We've got loads of posters that you can put up in your workplace that can help start these conversations. So let me just check. Oh, that wasn't bad. No, bang on 20 past. That's very unusual. I can tend to talk about this for months and months on end. So I hope this was useful. And if you've got any questions, please do pop them in the chat. If you're comfortable to shout at me, I'm more than happy to do them in that format. But I'm going to hand over to Laura now. Will be able to let me know if anybody's got any questions in the chat.
Thank you very much, Julie. Really interesting stuff. So I have put Julie's details in the chat. So if you wanted to get those from there, and the link to the website is also there. There are a couple of questions. So is there something businesses can do to show people they're external to the organisation, that they are an employer that supports those that experience symptoms of menopause?
Yeah, absolutely. There's lots of things you can do. One of the things as an organisation, we run a menopause friendly membership. So you can join as a member. You can display our menopause friendly badge on your website, on your emails, etc. And that will be able to demonstrate to other people. But it is really about changing that culture, having that conversation, putting some material up in communal spaces. So having posters, running workshops and coffee mornings and having that kind of conversation. Doesn't have to be a huge policy change. We find a lot of organisations, and large organisations don't have policies. They have a guidance document that is a bit of a toolkit. So yeah, you absolutely can start having these conversations, put some of the posters up, start running some kind of session. You'll be amazed how many people will start having that conversation once you start that going. But come back to me if you want anything specific, email me and I can send you some stuff over.
Fantastic. We've got another question about some of the male menopause symptoms.
Okay,
Have you
yeah.
got any information on that for us?
Yeah, so the male menopause, so it is officially what men can't go through, clinically can't go through a menopause, but they go through something called andropause. Now, this is a much longer time. They do experience some very similar symptoms, but it tends to be over a longer period of time, not quite so noticeable, but there is a condition where it's called, I'm just trying to think, brain fog, just not, the word's not coming to me, it'll come back to me, which when the symptoms are much more intense, and that isn't andropause, that is something that will need some treatment. So hypogonadism, that's it. So they will need to go to the doctors and get some support, and it's really about managing those symptoms. So they will be experiencing very similar things to the menopause, but as I said, if it is over a longer period of time, then it can be but it can be manageable.
Thank you. We've also got another question, obviously, about the way the workplace is changing and becoming a lot more remote.
Yes.
In terms of the posters and stuff, is there any other ideas that you have or successful ways that you manage the communications around this when we are tending to work a lot more remotely than we ever have done before?
Yeah, absolutely. Electronic is the future and has been for many years. So we often have organisations that will if they've got an intranet page, they might set up a well-being page on there. You can also don't misunderstand the importance of our email signatures. You can put lots of information just at the bottom of an email. You can use a link if there is people are coming into a communal space in an office. The QR code, you can put a QR code which will take you to a website. So there's lots of ways that you can do it. Another, if you've got people talking to an organization and they refer to them as they're on the tools people, so they're not online, they might be working in the field, so how do we access those? And they found that using flyers and leaflets, putting into work bags and things like that can also engage. But it is really about looking at your organization and is there something that everybody can access? And often it is things like an email, or if there is a website that you can use.
Fantastic, thank you. And do you have any sort of top tips that are practical, the way we can support employees that are experiencing sort of the practicalities of it?
Yeah, absolutely. And the first thing is asking though that how are they feeling? It might be that they might not have recognized that there's changes in them. I recently speaking to a friend of mine that's going through menopause, and she asked her mum how her mum's menopause was, and her mum's understanding of her menopause is completely different to my friend. Her mum that felt that she sailed through it, whereas my friend didn't experience quite the same. So it might be that the individuals that you're working with aren't aware that these changes are happening. So it might be that you need to be able to ask them if they're okay. So it's really about starting that conversation and being led by them. So for example, if somebody has got temperature control is an issue, so they're having the hot flushes, providing a fan for them. If they are sitting next to a window, that might be easier, allowing them to work from home where they're able to control their own temperature and sit in their pants in their kitchen if they want to. That's one way. Whereas if you've got somebody who is struggling with insomnia and is really struggling in the morning to get their mojo going and get themselves going, avoid having any meetings in the morning. Maybe if they're presenting figures or they're presenting project updates, try and schedule that in the afternoon where maybe they're feeling a bit more themselves. So it is about asking those questions. I can send you our menopause friendly checklist, which is exactly as it says on the tin. It is a checklist. You can go through it. It's a tick box. It's looking at all the things that you can have in place. I can, if you get in touch with me, email me, I can send that out to you. So that's a really good place to start. But it is really about opening up that conversation, letting people know that they can talk about it. As I said at the beginning, we want to be normalizing this conversation, removing the stigma and the taboo. So those 46% of people don't feel that they can't talk about this anymore.
And I'm conscious of time, so we've just got 2 more questions in the chat, if that's okay. One of them is, in terms of a business perspective, is it more about the signposting than the policy? What should be the priority there?
A bit of both. If you've got signposting and you're asking your managers to deal with these conversations, they'll want to have something in place to support them. So if you have some guidance, that would be great. But absolutely, external signposting and internal signposting is brilliant. Make sure when you are signposting externally that these are reliable, accurate, factual websites. So the British Menopause Society, NHS websites, as opposed to the Dr. Google type things where you want to make sure that it's factual and it's current. So
perfect. Thank you. And then the one last thing, and it's a nice one to end on. Do you have an example of a positive story when an organisation has implemented support around menopause and remove that sort of taboo that still exists? Have you got a sort of a good motivational story for us at the end, Julie?
I have loads. I'm going to give you 2. The first one is we ran a session with a government, a local authority, a webinar for managers. They all came in. There was one particular manager, male manager. He was in his 30s, early 30s. He, at the end of our sessions, we always ask for feedback, and he said, by his own admission, he was dragged kicking and screaming to this session. What was the relevance to him? Why was he there? He actually said it was the best training session he'd ever been on, and he was going to leave work and go home and give his mum a big hug because he knew what she was going through. So if that's made that difference. So that's the first one, and I love that story because it really, you can imagine that the room was filled with warmth when we heard what he said. And the second one is around an organisation we work with called South Eastern Rail. As you can imagine, a very male-dominated organisation. They have been having training from us at Menopause in the Workplace. We've been in existence for 7 years. They've been having mandatory training delivered from us for about 6 years now. And that came from one individual who was a train driver who went to go about, when they're about to get onto a train and drive the train, they have to sign a disclaimer form to say that they've had a good night's sleep. And this particular train driver couldn't sign the form because his partner was really struggling with night sweats and was having a really bad night's sleep. And by her having a bad night's sleep meant he was also having a bad night's sleep. He was very supportive, trying to do everything he could to be able to help her, but it was now impacting on him at work. So when he went to work, he spoke to his manager about it, and it was following that conversation and that understanding that this is now impacting significantly on people in our organisation that they now run line manager training and have done for the last 6 years. There are lots of other stories, but those are the 2 that I think make a big difference, because it is about a cultural change, changing hearts and minds, making these conversations much more positive. So we're not looking at these statistics saying 10% of people are leaving. We want to be thinking about these statistics that more menopausal age individuals are coming into the workplace.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Julie. And we are just past the past mark, so I do know a couple of people have dropped off, must have other meetings and stuff, but that's a great session. Obviously, any questions you've got, you can contact the Thrive team or you can contact Julie herself. Have a look at our LinkedIn page. There's lots of information there. Have a look at the Henpicked website. Again, you'll find lots of information there. So from the Thrive team and from Henpicked, I'd just like to say thank you for joining us today. Getting the words out there is really important. So fantastic. Thank you very much, guys.
Lovely to meet you all.